Hello, and thank you to everyone for carving out time in your day to join us online with our work from home webinar series. On behalf of Resolver, we hope you, your families, and your teams are staying healthy and adjusting well to this shift to a remote working world. My name is Jeff Sieben. I'm a product manager at Resolver, and on behalf of Resolver, we're excited to connect with you and share some of our best practices on how to shift from a reactive to a proactive approach on security risks. So to do that, we are going to look at the ASIS ESRM guideline. So as a benefit to ASIS members, the ESRM guideline is free and you can access the full guideline by going to asisonline.org. Many of you have seen this before, and if you haven't, you can go take a look. In security, we spend a great deal of time thinking about how to go about protecting the organization we work for. Many of us, many of the activities that corporate security personnel do are in reaction to an event. There's no hiding that. But that's definitely a necessary part of security. Well, we want to help you shift your thinking to be more proactive in your approach to security and to help you think like risk managers. As we walk through the foundation, the context, and move through the ESRM cycle, I want you to think as we go through about the assets in your organization, in each department that you need that need protecting. I also want you to think like an attacker when we go through that section and how attackers create new paths to exploit your organization. I want you to think about the risk management principles that you know right now and how to grow them. And I also want you to think about finding another person in ASIS or otherwise that you can talk with about this. So close your email. I know it's probably open right next to you. Close the other tabs on your browser and let's dive in. Understanding and certainly the theory behind how a mature business culture is managed shifts us from reacting to a changing business environment to proactively managing risk with the department heads together. Understanding key stakeholders, whether internal or external to your organizations, is important. So for internal stakeholders, their position in the company and their personal drive moves the objectives of the organization forward. These are some of the most influential people in your company. And if something goes wrong, likely they're the ones that have a lot to lose. So what we try and do is help them understand the risks that they face, the risks to the assets and the objectives, and then really how to help them and work towards with them to lose less. Also, a company's risk management culture is foundational. Um, who contributes to the culture of risk management? Well, leadership does. Every one of those in management and your executive and the board absolutely contribute. Every other employee of the company contributes to the risk management culture. For example, if your CEO doesn't want to hear about any new risks, that contributes to the risk management culture. If your contract security force doesn't know how to communicate well with the people that they interact with, that contributes to a risk management culture. If your plant manager doesn't want to talk to you, that contributes also to the risk management culture. So every employee, every manager, every leader um, contributes somehow to that ultimate risk management culture. And it's great. I want you to think about what your risk management culture is like. Building a proactive risk management culture takes sponsorship, it takes effort, and it takes time. So what you and other employees do or don't do helps shape that risk management culture for the better or worse. Another foundational principle, eliminating silos. So I know, you know, I think everyone generally knows that silos are part of organizational culture. You can think probably very clearly of some of those right now in your own company. There are many, many reasons that silos exist, but the goal really is to work together so that their effect is lessened. Transparency can play a great part in eliminating silos. There are, if you remember, department heads, man, there are strong-willed, ambitious, personally ambitious people that are driving your organization forward, and sometimes they're the cause of these silos. And so we want to help protect the things that they want protected, help them move towards the things that they want to do and meet their objectives. And sometimes it takes, we can eliminate these silos, at least some of the effect of them, with a bit of transparency. One good example, I like my friend in ASAS, Tim McCreet. He was he had this big silo kind of organization. It was naturally siloed. It was in government, and there were, you know, strong, ambitious, powerful heads. And so they went to the group, and they did a compliance program. Hey, here you go. Hey, we want you to respond and be compliant this way. And nobody listened, of course. At the end of it, they did a risk management score. They exposed the scores to all the management, and lo and behold, there was someone at the top and someone at the bottom. And so each of the ambitious managers self-regulated. So transparency can really help sometimes. We want this mentality of a wolf pack, not just a lone wolf, even though there are definitely lone wolves out there. And you think about it. Can you identify a lone wolf stakeholder in your company? How would you go about interacting with them to help bolster that wolf pack mentality? How do you work with that? Personal agendas definitely play a big role in contributing to silos, and we want to try and help work together. And also, finally, here, foundationally, are industry collaborators. So, if you're not part of ASAS or an association like ASAS, go find a peer, someone that you can talk with. You can, if you are a member of ASAS, they've got this open forum on their Connects platform. It's amazing, and you can ask lots of questions. If you're there, you're probably already seeing that. And definitely, you can rely on someone like me. Give me a call. Find me on LinkedIn or any one of the professionals that are at Resolver. So understanding the context is another big part of the ESRM guideline and definitely contributes to the cycle. Understanding the value that assets bring to a department and a company shifts us from reacting to department management to proactively working with them to protect their business. The ESRM guideline defines an asset owner as a member of an enterprise who's most accountable and responsible for the productivity, performance, and overall operation of an asset. These are things that are tangible or intangible, have intangible value to an organization. Department heads definitely need to own their assets. Another ASIS friend, Tom Berkery, he loves to use the term extreme ownership for this. Asset owners are most accountable to ensure that the assets are meeting the mission. And maybe the mission is turning a profit. These days, there's a shifting, there may be some shifting objectives to deal with the pandemic that is upon the humanity right now, and undoubtedly part of affecting your organization. Security helps make sure that threats are managed to keep that asset doing what it's supposed to do. Your asset owners have great insights on how to protect. So take them for coffee, listen to them. Tom, my ASAS friend, engages in management, and he develops these relationships on a weekly basis. And he asks some questions like, how do you want to receive an email that has some bad news to it? Do you want it in the middle of the night? Do you want it? Do you want a phone call? Another question: when you don't have a policy in place for this one thing, we're going to all fall back to human rationale. Is that acceptable to you? So having those good conversations with department heads will help you understand the context. Other stakeholders that you can have these type of conversations with, other employees in the company, your clients, communities or special interest groups, vendors are a very big one. There's the public. Another example, Tom, and I'm going to have to give him some credit or send him a gift card, but Tom has this good example where there was somebody filming a building on public property of the company property, and the officer walked up and said, "You're not allowed to do that." And of course, they're on public property; they're definitely allowed to do that. And so now this they were recording, made it onto some news, and this the you know prevents or helps or it helped negatively see the organization in the public eye. So, how you interact with these other stakeholders is really key. And then the last piece in here is the attack surface. So once you've got an understanding of who the assets are, who the main stakeholders are, understanding the attack surface, because that's where we're going to go next, into the mind of the attacker. Keep in mind, there's a human attack surface right now. Many of us are working from home, as you can see. I'm in the basement of my home. Sometimes there are kids or family members using company assets now. There are trusted vendors who are now introducing potential weak links. So there's a human attack surface. Somebody can just come and knock on the front door. So definitely, and there's a human part to it. There's a physical part, which is I'm in a neighborhood. You're probably in a neighborhood, especially in the context of this work from home that's happening. So keep in mind this physical attack surface as we go through. And then there's a virtual attack surface. You're connected to the internet. If you're at home, you're going through maybe your own configured router. You're using company assets. On that network are your cell phone, your personal cell phones, and other internet connected devices. Even things like Zoom bombing. So these are things to keep aware. So let's dive into the attacker mentality. Understanding the attacker mentality in advance of negative incidents shifts us from reacting to the attacker to planning for the attacker. This section here is adapted from another ASAS collaborator, Val Letelier, and you can find his articles. I'll include them in the resources at the end that you'll get. I think we're going to send these out. But you can also find him on security management. You can see some of his articles there. He talks about a singular focus, and the big example is the attack on Sony by the Guardians of Peace in 2014. Some of you may remember this. Some of these details with course, this singular focus. The attack began as a spear phishing attack against employees who had significant or root access to the Sony network. Access was obtained. The attackers then focused on causing maximum pain, even taking and dribbling out the harmful emails for maximum effect. It was a broad and deep leak. There was personal information about employees, their families, emails between employees, information about executive salaries, copies of then the unreleased Sony films, and other information. The attackers then used malware to erase Sony's computer infrastructure, and this is all public domain information. While there are many lessons that we can learn from this, attackers can have this singular focus, and in this case for Sony, their mission was one thing: to harm as much as possible. Number two here is patience. Attackers have just almost supernatural patience. So a good example is this was a diamond theft in ABN AMRO's bank in, I think, 2007. So no one knows this person's real name, but the staff knew him as Carlos Hector Flomenbaum. You can look it up, definitely out open on the internet. He billed himself as a successful businessman. He had frequented the bank for at least a year, like a whole year. And the bank's employees began to fall in love with him. He brought them chocolates. He talked about non-diamond related matters. He won their trust and eventually got VIP access to the vault. And so, of course, this is over a year. I'm shortening this down into like a couple minutes. So, you know, it's there's a great deal of patience here. One night in March 2007, he let himself in, broke into the safety deposit boxes, and walked out with $28 million in diamonds. The bank had a $2 million security system, and you know, this is how attackers think. Like, just, you know, very, very patient at times. And a third one, nonlinear thinking. Attackers think this way. So an example was in the Las Vegas casino, there was an internet-enabled fish tank. As an example, the attackers exploited the sensors connected on that fish tank that were connected to a PC that was connected to the company network. And basically, they ended up stealing 10 gigabytes of private data, including the most coveted, the high roller database. So this is, you know, very, very protected information, all because of an internet-connected fish tank sensor system. So attackers will come from anywhere they can. And then the fourth example there, backward reasoning, thinking about like, how do I get access to something, and by any vector that they can. So the example was a big retail giant. They were, you know, you would know them if I use their name. Just huge, and they were, at the time, they were hiring, and they had, the attackers wanted to get access to the backbone of their network, basically the point of sale system. So they used in-store job application computer kiosks. And if you look that up, you'll probably find them. They went in through the USB ports. They turned the devices into remote terminals with access to the main network. The firewalls on their network weren't set to defend against this malicious traffic. And of course, this is a good long while ago. Things are different now. Months later, the attackers accessed the improperly secured Wi-Fi with a powerful antenna from the parking lot. They stole credit card data for at least 18 months before they were discovered, and over 45 million records of the customer's payment data was lost. Attackers have no rules. They have they don't care about political correctness or manners or morality or conscience. They have no problem following your CEO home, or any other employee for that matter. Attackers have no problem booking a hotel room next to an executive and getting to know them. They have no problem sending bad emails to your employees' family, and trying to connect with family members of employees on Facebook or other social media. The bottom line is that attackers are comfortable doing things that the rest of us just aren't. So thinking about them really helps us uncover some risks that can come onto the network. And so now we're going to talk about risk management. Understanding the risks to the business assets shifts us from only writing things like incident reports and reactively to proactively managing risk with the full effect of risk management. Basically, we want to we want a baseline of incidents that are happening for certain, so we know at least what's going on. So if you don't have that in place, and you probably do, that's something that you just have to get in place. You need a baseline before you can know what's actually happening. It measures that so that you can see your effect. And then we get into things like real risk management. So if you've taken any of the ASIS certifications, you'll have gone through the basics of risk management. First of all, let's avoid. So check in with the business and the department heads. Is there certain things that the business can do to avoid these risks from happening? Do we really need an internet-connected fish tank sensor system? Do we really need job kiosks that are connected to the company network? Do we really want to give VIP access to people that we don't do background checks on? So like there's things that we can do. We can just avoid this altogether. There was as an example, there was this is personally, I was hearing of this board member of a Japanese multi-campus university, and they had to travel to a campus, and the short way through was through this radiation zone near the power plant. And so to move quickly, they could go through the high radiation zone. But to avoid that, and to avoid the exposure of this board member, they and basically a risk to the flesh of the person, they took the longer route. And yes, it took longer, but they just avoided it, the risk altogether. Another way is, of course, to mitigate, and this is where you probably are very good at looking at ways to mitigate. When you think like attackers, you're able to sort of think of ways to mitigate this. So find if you don't have a good set of resources like ASIS, or you don't have rivers of information where you can go or people you can talk with, start there. Using, like, there's a ton of new technologies that are out there, but which is the best technology, which is the best camera system, which is the best access control system, which is the best incident management system? How do we find these tools? So getting access to those is important. GSX is also a great ASIS, and the GSX conference, which is supposed to be in September. These are definitely places where you can find out good mitigation strategies. Having a security compliance program in place is good. So I mentioned Tim, who put a compliance program together and then exposed all the risk scores of these major stakeholders. That was a mitigation strategy based on compliance. So being able to have a good security compliance program in place helps to mitigate risks. If you we all know this, if you go and rattle a door and it's open and there's a whole room full of laptops, well, after hours, there was a little bit of a mini risk assessment that was done, and definitely part of security compliance. The risk transfer is also quite an important piece. So basically, that's going to be things like insurance. Being able to work with your insurance company, those that buy insurance or work with your insurance brokers or underwriters. Do you know who those people are? The security person and the insurance person need to be on a first name basis. And if you don't know who buys insurance at your company, Go and try and find them, and that will shift you from being more reactive to being more proactive. Everyone these days is trying to buy insurance. There's lots, of course, going on. Trying to differentiate yourself from your competitors gets you a better rate on insurance, and the things that you do help lower the cost of this, of insurance premiums. So one very tangible example that you'll be able to use is in the insurance industry, the kind of the average time to report insurance claims is targeted for 0 to 3 days. If and you can ask me about this, just ping me after, and I'll definitely take you through more of the examples. If you go outside of that 3 days and you go into, let's something like from 7 to 14 days, it costs your company almost 20% more by not moving through that insurance to get to that insurance claim and report it to the insurance company within 7 days. So if you go outside of that, it costs your company 20% more. Just because it's longer, it takes longer to collect all that information. It gets a little fuzzier. So, just reporting things quicker, getting the information quicker, getting that out of your employees, making the risk management culture, building it in such a way that you can accept this information from employees quicker, help save your company money. And the last thing, of course, you can accept the risk, and that is definitely not something that we want to do lightly. That is something absolutely to do with the departments and the department heads and those ambitious people talking about ways to avoid, to mitigate, to transfer, and then at the end, sometimes accept. And at the end of the day, it's their role to accept that or not. There's nothing that we can do. I mean, you could say, hey, I'm going to accept the risk, but then, if something bad happens, they've got the most to lose. And at the end of the day, you want to make sure that the businesses that you work with know what's at stake. So, sorry, jumped ahead there a little too quickly. Are there any questions that are out there? And if you go to the Q&A, just click on that. Should be right in your Zoom interface. And then we will answer those questions. Any questions in there? Some questions coming, looks like. Oh, maybe not. Oh, here we go. They are not coming in through the Q&A. There things look like they're coming in through the chat. Hang on here, let me pull up the chat. Okay, so here's a good one. Are risk assessments a good way to start the security risk management process? A crawl versus a run? Yeah, absolutely. So this can be like a frame of mind. If you have security that do patrols, they're already doing mini security assessments. The thing that they may or may not be doing is tracking those and the things that they find. You may be just comfortable, oh, they were on their patrols and this is what they did, and they did a patrol, they didn't find anything, and that's absolutely a good way. Being able to capture that and track that is definitely a way that that you can sort of show the effort that's putting in. No bad things are happening. We're not getting any negative events because we are doing these mini risk assessments all the time. So definitely a good way is to track that and start reframing your thinking that these are mini risk assessments. Every single one of your security patrols is a mini risk assessment. More questions? Looking at some, what can I do to get faster at getting claims to insurance? So that's probably, yeah, how to save your company 20% if you're doing it past 7 days. So yeah, like I mentioned, a quicker way is to, to be able to have like some sort of, like an omni-channel. If you have something like a safety incident or a security incident or some suspicious activity or just any observation, having like an intranet or a place where all employees can go to submit that observation. Doesn't mean you have to do something with it all the time or something active, but being able to have that river of observation come in from your employees without without saying like, oh, we don't have pushing back and saying like, we want the risk management culture to increase. So having a portal that way is good. There is, looks like 2 more questions. Regarding ESRM, I know we're like slightly over time. I'm going to do one more. Regarding ESRM, are you aware of any benchmarking studies? Success stories. Yes, there definitely are. ASIS has those. If you go into the open forum, if you're not a member, you probably have to be a member or go find a member at your organization. And they've got some, they've definitely got some success stories. If you go look up a guy named Tom Berkery online on LinkedIn, you could ask him and tell him Jeff Sieben sent you, and he'll definitely open up the floodgates for you. He's a great resource there. There are some more questions, of course, coming in now. We're out of time, but thank you so much for everyone for attending, for taking time while you work remotely, for the work from home. On behalf of Resolver, we hope your families and your colleagues and your leadership are staying safe, working from home, social distancing, washing your hands, and definitely collaborating as the whole culture is changing these days. If you have any questions, reach out to me directly. We'll get you the slides. Yeah, have a safe and wonderful day.